For every American closely tracking government oversight, this Senate exchange is a must-watch. Senator Welch held FBI Director Kash Patel accountable regarding an $80 million aircraft plan and official travel logs. Watch what happens as the senator pushes for real answers.
That would cost about $72 million. Is that right?
That's inaccurate. The FBI, because the jet, as you call it, is not my jet. We use it for operational needs. We use it for FTOX. We use it for HRT.
But that's the one you fly in, right?
We have multiple fixed-wing assets, and one of them is on a wildly expensive lease that I deemed a waste of money, and I'm looking for a replacement in which the government can procure assets permanently.
Well, I would welcome you submitting to this committee the cost information about the jets that are under consideration. And according to our research, the specifications that are included in this request would result in an expenditure of between $72 million and $80.
Stay tuned so you catch every critical moment. Paying attention to these hearings is vital for every taxpayer. Watch the unedited footage now.
So afflicting our country, it doesn't matter whether it's from the right or the left. I mean, all of us have an obligation to fiercely advocate for our point of view. All of us have an obligation to respect people with whom we disagree. The folks we disagree with are our opponents, but they're not our enemies. And I hope all of us keep that in mind and do the best we can to set that example. I want to congratulate the FBI. I want to congratulate the Utah state and local law enforcement for the very good work that it did in apprehending the violent assailant of Charlie Kirk, and that is a terrible, terrible tragedy. Director Patel, at one point you made an announcement that the suspect was in custody. We got our man. It turned out that was not true. In fact, I think that was about 27 hours before the person now in custody was apprehended. Why did you make that statement?
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate you letting me address this. What the FBI does is not just locate and find suspects, but we also participate in eliminating subjects. And what we had at the time was a subject in custody in relation to this investigation. So in my commitment to work with the public to help identify subjects and suspects, I put that information out. And then when we interviewed him, I put out the results of that. And could I have been more careful in my verbiage and included an A subject instead of subject? Sure, in the heat of the moment, but I was doing the best I could.
In all candor, I don't quite get that, because if we have our man, that would suggest to the public that everybody can rest and relax and not then continue to provide information to local law enforcement and to you. Well, so that was a mistake.
I don't see it as a mistake. I see it as something working with the public to identify that there was a subject.
So
the most critical part of this hearing is unfolding right now. You just watched Senator Welch question the FBI's public statements after a premature arrest announcement. But that defense raises a much bigger question about agency accountability. Ask yourself, is official messaging being handled with enough transparency? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Senator Welch refuses to back down. Watch carefully as he shifts to a decorated 18-year FBI veteran who was abruptly fired.
So if you put out a statement that says we've got our man, and in fact it turns out that you didn't have your man, that's not a mistake?
But that's not what I said.
Well, I'll go on. That's my understanding. A second thing that is really important in the FBI, but it's important in every agency, is that the folks who are doing good work get supported for the work they're doing. And a number of highly successful FBI agents have been let go. And I want to just ask you a little bit about that. You know who Brian Driscoll is, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, okay. And my understanding is he served at the FBI for over 18 years. You agree?
I believe that's accurate.
Special agent in charge of the Newark office. He was commander of the FBI's hostage rescue team. That's a very prestigious and responsible position, correct?
It is.
Section chief of the Critical Incident Response Group's tactical section. You've got to be pretty pretty good to get that high responsibility. You agree with that?
Yes, sir.
He oversaw 55 SWAT teams, and they're like the elite of the elite, right? They go in to the dangerous situations, right? He got a Medal of Valor for his participation in a raid on ISIS terrorist Abu Sayyaf, who had kidnapped American citizens Kyla Mueller, right? Mueller? Is that right?
I know.
You're in agreement, right?
I know Kayla Mueller's family, yes. I know this.
Okay, and he got Kurt Meyer, somebody who had barricaded himself in a bar after he killed 4 people and wounded 2. And Driscoll was part of the team that went in there and took that guy out, right?
I don't have all the details, but I'll take your word for it, Senator.
And he got into trouble when Emil Bove demanded a list of FBI agents who investigated January 6th and was apprehensive that what did happen ultimately would happen, and that is those folks would get fired. I mean, do you agree with me that a boss who stands up for his subordinates when they did the job that was asked of them is a stand-up person and somebody to be admired?
Generally speaking, yes, sir.
Pardon me?
Generally speaking, yes, sir.
But Driscoll got fired, right?
Again, that matter is under litigation, and the matter you referenced occurred before I was
Okay, but
director.
let's just keep it fairly narrow here. He's fired, right?
Yes, he was terminated.
And he has to be, there's somebody communicates to him that he's terminated, correct?
That's my job.
That's your job. So you communicated to him that he was fired.
I did.
So,
Notice how Welch built his argument step by step. He walked Patel through Agent Driscoll's entire record 55 SWAT teams. Hostage rescue, Medal of Valor, getting Patel to praise him out loud right before confirming he personally fired him. Ask yourself, should standing up for subordinate agents ever cost a decorated officer his career? Let me know below. Senator Welch now shifts from personnel to taxpayers' dollars. Watch what happens when he pulls out flight logs.
So, I have a hard time with this because that record suggests to me that this person is like worthy of consideration for the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and he got fired.
But there's also a record of other information that was available, and now that this matter is pending litigation, we will get that out in due course. But as you can agree.
So you've got, quote, other information that you see as a valid basis to fire somebody who, from what I can tell, had an absolutely outstanding record and who crossed the threshold of getting in trouble because he was standing up for agents serving under him who did work that was assigned to them that happened to be related to the January 6th uprising.
Again, you're correlating based on your information, the reasons for his termination, and I'm telling you.
No, that's right. Let me ask you another question. When you were here, you were rightly critical, not here actually, I guess it was on Cash's corner. You were rightly critical of the way that the previous FBI director used the FBI jet. And you said you wanted to ground Chris Wray's private jet travel that he pays for with taxpayer dollars to hop around the country. Let me ask you this. On the weekend of, according to flight tracker data, on the weekend of March 7th, an FBI plane flew round trip from D.C. to Las Vegas, and you attended a UFC fight with Mel Gibson, and I'll show you that. Is that you, and is that true?
Yeah, you want to know the difference? I live in Las Vegas. I'm allowed to go home. I didn't leave a congressional hearing early on an FBI jet to dodge questions.
All right. Then on April 5th, you attended a hockey game in New York City. You don't live there, right?
No, I don't.
By the way, everyday FBI agents who are assigned in Washington don't get to fly home on a private jet.
Well, this is a great point. Do you know why I have to use a private jet? Because Congress made it mandatory.
Okay. In April 5th, well, we didn't make it mandatory that you go to UFC games with Mel Gibson.
Are you telling me I can't go home?
You got to use some judgment here.
So when I'm at home, I can't do what I'm doing when I go home. Everybody else is allowed to go home, just not me.
Let me keep going. No, I'm glad you go home. I love to go home. But I don't go home on a private jet. On April 5th,
They're not mandated to do so.
you attended a hockey game in New York City with Wayne Gretzky, and Flight Tracker says the FBI jet took you to and from New York City, where you don't live, right?
That's correct.
And on April,
Notice how Patel shifted his defense there, claiming private jets are mandatory, might explain going home to Vegas. But as Welch pointed out, nobody goes home to a hockey game in New York. Yet official security rules were used to justify trips to sporting events with celebrities. Ask yourself, are taxpayers funding personal travel under mandatory security rules? Share your thoughts below. Watch carefully as the debate moves directly to a $500 million police cut and an $80 million jet request.
and on April 12th, on the following weekend, you attended a UFC a fight in Miami, also on the FBI jet, right?
That's correct.
So what's the cost to the taxpayer for those 3 flights?
But I pay the commercial equivalent per the regs and the law. And so just so you know, when you are comparing me
I
to
just
prior
asked what
directors.
I asked what the cost was, and you don't know, I take it.
Yeah, and what I've done with the use of the private jet is use Andrews Air Force Base versus
Okay.
Reagan National as what the other directors have done
Bottom line
to
here,
save the taxpayer
bottom
dollars.
line here, you flew home to Las Vegas. There's nobody else in the FBI who gets paid. They have to pay their own way if they want to go home, right? I mean, right?
Well, that's not accurate. Depending on where you're stationed, the FBI covers the bill to get home.
So are you telling me that FBI agents who are assigned in Washington, but who may live in Charlotte, they get paid by the FBI to go
Sometimes
home?
they do, yes.
Right. Another thing I want to say is this. You know, our local law enforcement has been stiffed. About $500 million in COP grants have been taken out of the budget. Those really help us in Burlington. They help us in Rutland. They really are important. And why in the world would we be cutting those COP grants when we need that local law enforcement, in part to partner with you?
Well, I think
Do you
you're
support that?
I think you're speaking to the Department of Justice grants, which I don't adjudicate, but also Vermont, just like every other state, has received a plus-up of FBI personnel.
Well, I'll tell you, that's not what we're seeing. The other thing, my understanding is that there's a requisition or an effort to get another plane for the FBI that would cost about $72 million. Is that right?
That's inaccurate. The FBI, because the jet, as you call it, is not my jet. We use it for operational needs. We use it for FTOX. We use it for HRT.
But that's the one you fly in,
and
right?
we have multiple fixed-wing assets, and one of them is on a wildly expensive lease that I deemed a waste of money, and I'm looking for a replacement in which the government can procure assets permanently.
Well, but I would welcome you submitting to this committee the cost information about the jets that are under consideration. And according to our research, the specifications that are included in this request would result in an expenditure of between $72 million and $80 million.
That's inaccurate, but I'll happily get you the right
I
numbers.
welcome getting.
Look at what just happened here. Patel claimed the $80 million jet estimate was completely wrong, yet he couldn't provide a single actual number to correct it. When a top official asked taxpayers to trust him on a major aircraft purchase without giving hard figures in real time, that isn't a minor detail that raises serious questions about basic accountability. The reduction in COP grants right before the aircraft discussion highlights a major local funding issue. Community-oriented policing services grants, which is what Welch was referring to, have been a backbone of local law enforcement funding for decades. They pay for officers, training, equipment, and crisis response in exactly the kinds of communities that do not have deep municipal budgets. Burlington, Vermont is not a major metropolitan area. When those grants disappear, departments feel it fast. Patel's response was to note that Vermont received more FBI personnel, which is a federal asset, not a local one, and does not patch a budget hole in the city police department. This hearing reveals a clear conflict between promised budget cuts and actual spending decisions. Patel has made cost savings a centerpiece of his public identity as FBI director. He came in criticizing predecessor spending, promising to cut waste and run a leaner operation. But the picture that emerges across this hearing tells a more complicated story. Federal aircraft, used for personal entertainment events, a possible $80 million aircraft procurement, $500 million in local law enforcement grants cut from communities that depended on them. The argument that changing departure airports creates significant savings remains questionable when weighed against multi-million-dollar budget requests. Beyond individual flight records or grant programs, this hearing raises fundamental questions about overall agency accountability. When a director cannot name the cost of a plane he's acquiring, when he fires a decorated veteran and calls it litigation, when he simultaneously admits and denies making a mistake in the same sentence, what mechanism exists to compel actual answers? Welch did exactly what a senator is supposed to do. He came with documentation, flight tracker data, personnel records, and grant figures. He asked specific questions and took careful notes when specific answers were not given. When a Senate hearing ends without clear answers on multi-million-dollar spending, the debate doesn't stop in Washington. It moves to the public. Was Senator Welch right to push for every single dollar? Or did Director Patel have valid security reasons? Drop your take below. If you want straight facts and real oversight analysis, hit that like button and subscribe to the Politics Report. Thanks for tuning in.